Okay, guys, tonight I'm going to be talking about spelling to communicate for children with autism spectrum disorder. Let me make this full screen. So, what is spelling to communicate? Spelling to communicate, also known as S2C, teaches individuals with motor challenges purposeful skills needed to point to letters and spell as an alternative means of communication. The goal is to achieve synchrony between the brain and the body. As their motor skills improve, the spellers transition from pointing to letters on a letterboard to typing on keyboards. It's available for children 5 or older who are nonverbal, minimally verbal, or are unreliable speakers. It's also rapidly expanding across the country. Is it helpful? The current research suggests that individuals with autism and other sensory motor differences have inefficient motor and sensory feedback to coordinate their brain and body to work in a purposeful way. This is also called a brain-body disconnect. The goal of S2C is to help individuals build new motor pathways between the brain and body to help them communicate by spelling. As individuals build these motor pathways, responses move from more concrete to more abstract, allowing for individual expression and original thoughts from the speller. The problem with S2C is that it is closely related to 2 other approaches called facilitated communication and rapid prompting method. These methods rely on the person with a disability being dependent upon a facilitator to produce a message. With S2C, spellers rely on facilitators to hold their letterboards, so their access to communication relies on others, making their communication less independent. ASHA has released a statement discrediting facilitated communication and rapid prompting due to the fact that these 2 approaches don't allow for independence. So I have a video example of what S2C looks like.
Should we go check it
We'll
out?
just watch for a few minutes.
When you stay at a Virgo,
9 planets in the solar system until 2006, but it was reclassified.
Go bigger.
RECLASSIFIED. Reclassified means assigned to a different class or category, and it was reclassified as a dwarf DWARF planet. It confused and saddened many people why Pluto was evicted, EVICTED, and evicted means to be removed or forced out, and people were saddened when it was evicted from planet status. But something.
So as you can see here in the beginning, she's just reading a little story to him about these planets. And as she's reading, she'll get to keywords and she'll say the word out loud, spell it to him, and write it down. But it should also be noticed that while she's doing this, she is not making sure that he is engaged in the activity. As you can see, he's sitting there, not looking, just kind of fidgeting around, staring at the timer that you can see right there in the background. She's not making sure that he is listening to anything or asking any questions. She is just reading and spelling out certain words for him. And here in a second, you'll see her hold up the spelling boards and ask him to spell some words.
Something had to be done following the discovery of several objects of similar size that are in the Kuiper belt. Kuiper is spelled Kuiper, and belt is BELT. Okay, let's get warmed up.
Here she's about to start
Let's
spelling.
spell planet. Let me hold your fidgies. And we're gonna, yeah, it's good to see you. We're just gonna warm up with a spell word, okay? Let's spell the word planet. Like your chat. All right, here we go. So Joey, what I want us to work on today is really standing with our eyes first and then poking one time, okay? I want you to poke one time the letter that you're intending. Letters first, just planet. Go. One poke. And nice looking. Look on this one, okay? Look, right next door, T. Let's go straight back to that T. You have a tendency to want to go to that S first. Perfect.
So as you can see in that video, he didn't really stop to explain like why he wasn't poking the right letters. And it's also kind of a big deal in the research right now with the way that he's holding those boards and giving all of those like gestures and verbal cues that are they even generalizing or understanding what they're doing because there's no pause between like when he mispokes a letter, like she doesn't pause and be like, okay, that's not the right letter. She just gives him like visual and verbal cues to poke the right letter and then they just move on. Another thing that's been a big issue is the fact that when the facilitator is holding the boards, there's been instances where the facilitator will move the board like at the last second. So they end up actually poking the right letter, but it's not actually them poking the right letter. It's due to the fact that the facilitator is moving the board. So they're not actually spelling the words. The facilitator is doing it for them, which leads for like less generalization because they're not actually spelling anything and it's harder to generalize. So the cons of S2C is that ASHA warns against it because, like I mentioned earlier, it's closely related to the facilitated communication method and rapid prompting method that's already been discredited by ASHA. It relies heavily on aids for prompting, like I was just saying on these past two slides. It's very time consuming. To be certified to be a speller, you have to be a spelling teacher, you have to go to a 14-week training. If you are like a client speller, they typically want you there around 2 to 3 hours per week just working on that spelling, like the video I showed you. It's also very expensive to get the training to become a facilitator. It's a $3,000 program for those 14 weeks that I just mentioned. So some things that I thought was interesting and thought you guys might also want to think about is like, why do you think that so many clinicians are still willing to provide these services, pay that $3,000 fee to get certified when the research is suggesting that S2C is not very effective, has less generalization due to the fact that it's just so closely related to facilitated communication and the rapid prompting method. Like, why do you think that parents and clinicians are so entwined with this method when they could just use a regular AAC? Why do you think they don't want to do that? And here are my references. And yeah. All right, thank you. If you guys have any questions or want more information about the research, just let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to help you out. Awesome, thanks.